in this real estate world that we're in, people kind of go about it backwards, and it's just how we're trained to do it, where they fall in love with the house and then they try to figure out the mortgage side of things. But let's reverse that. Let's get you comfortable with what you should be shopping for based on what you can afford monthly, and then go and fall in love with the house.
Welcome back to Good Better Broker as we bring in Lucas Vanderbosch. He is a mortgage loan originator with Mitten Mortgage Lending based here in Metro Detroit. Lucas, great to have you here.
Justin, thanks for having me. It's a blessing to be here.
Well, I'd like to congratulate you, first of all, because you by far have the best flow, and by that I mean hair, of any dude we have ever had on Good Better Broker. So way to go.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
A bit about you. You got into the business back in 2023. And Lucas, your path to the mortgage industry is very interesting. It included time both in tech sales and the golf industry, where you were telling me that you learned you have this knack for customer service.
Yeah.
How did you figure that out?
Well, it really started in the golf industry. So for me, not so much in the tech sales, but more in the golf industry space. And so I was very lucky and very blessed to work at the places that I did in the golf industry. And for me, it was just like working at very high-end private country clubs around the U.S. and servicing the 1% of the 1%, and realizing that, hey, how I treat Mr. Smith versus how I treat Mr. Jones is two completely different interactions. It's not me changing who I am, but it's how he wants to relax versus how he wants to relax. And it may be Mr. Jones, and it may be some words I can't say on this podcast saying hi to Mr. Smith, right? Because everybody wants that personal interaction. And so taking that into mortgages, it made me realize, okay, it doesn't matter if you're buying a $50,000 trailer or a multi-million-dollar home, you're getting the best service that I can provide for you. And so it was a really cool interaction for me for me, it was really cool transition to come into mortgages and realize that I have that skill set that I can use.
And for you, Lucas, this is all about relationship building as opposed to sales.
Yeah.
What role has relationship building played in your growth as a mortgage loan originator?
Well, that's a great question, because if you ask me, Lucas, are you good at sales? I'd tell you no. I'm the worst salesperson ever. Like, I could not go on a used car lot and be successful, or I don't know, like in any other sales world. There's a lot of skill sets that those people have that I just don't have. And so through the golf industry and then through tech sales leading into mortgages, I found that I was just really good at connecting with people. And that way, when you can build a relationship and you can build rapport with people very well, now they trust you. And so when you're converting that into mortgages now, this is one of the biggest financial decisions that anybody's going to make in their life. And so you're basically giving them a physical on their financial portfolio, right? And you got to make them comfortable, and you got to make sure that they can trust you. And so being able to build relationships is very, very key.
It's interesting because, you don't often think about trust as a commodity, but in a sense, it really is, because like you were saying, sales may not be your thing, but when you have that trust established with somebody, that's almost better than being able to sell them on a particular loan product.
Right. And not that sales isn't required for this, but if you're relying on sales, and not that I'm saying that people that do are bad at this or anything like that, but if you're relying on sales techniques to get somebody into a mortgage, I think you should probably take a step back and ask the purpose behind what you're doing and why you're doing it, because I don't think that your heart posture would be to help them if you're trying to sell them on something. Right? I mean, like, you have to be able to convince them that it's the best thing for them, but it has to first be the best thing for them, right?
Sure. So, Lucas, as you were learning the ropes in the mortgage business, you were watching other LOs do certain things, and that's where you saw an opportunity. What did you see?
Yeah, for me, we'll go back to it. I was never supposed to be a mortgage broker. And so how I got into this was a very interesting interaction. I bought my first home, and that loan originator, I thought at the time he did a really good job. And so at closing, he showed up at closing. I'll give him a lot of props for that. I was like, hey, tell me a little bit more about this thing. And we went and got a drink, and then the next day he set up a meeting with the owner of Mitten Mortgage Lending, and he offered me a job if I got certified. So it was a really interesting experience. But looking back on how he handled me getting a mortgage and then learning through other people in my first year, I realized that there was some things that just should have been talked about to clients that weren't being talked about. And for me, it's like, let's dive into how, like, I want to make you drink from a fire hose of information. You and I talked about that previously. And it's like, I want you to be able to take all of this information and if it doesn't make sense initially, that's okay. Ask me a question because it's my job to explain it to you in a different way that makes sense. And if you have to ask the same question 18 times, I'm glad you asked it 18 times. So I want to make sure that I'm telling them everything that I possibly can, but it really kind of focused around three main areas. And for me, I have a whole process, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But for me, the three main questions that I ask the client is, hey, what do you want your cash to close to be? And that encompasses two different things. That encompasses closing costs and down payment. So let's talk about that, because there's a big misconception when people are having these conversations. They're like, I got 10K for a down payment. Well, we got to talk about closing costs too. Then the second question I have for them is, hey, like, what do you want your monthly payment to be? Because I want to back into your pre-approval. I don't want to tell you what you can qualify for, because hot take, I don't care what you qualify for. I care about what you can afford. And then third question is, where do you want to live? And if we're talking specifically in Michigan, property taxes are a massive topic of conversation. So if you live in West Bloomfield versus Rochester Hills, your tax basis is going to be completely different. So when those taxes get reassessed, that same home in Bloomfield Hills versus Rochester Hills, your monthly payment's going to be completely different. So let's talk about where you want to live, and then that sets me up for my next piece of my pre-approval process, if you will. So that's really what drove me into creating this process that I have.
Yeah, we're going to get to more about the pre-approval process, but let's back up for a moment, because those pieces about monthly payment and how much cash you want to bring to the closing table, those aren't necessarily things that people are thinking about immediately.
Yeah.
For you, though, having gone through it yourself,
yeah,
and kind of just being able to process and internalize that, it must have made you say to yourself, I need to put myself in the shoes of other first-time home buyers out there, because this is stuff that they absolutely need to be thinking about.
Yeah, they definitely do. And it's funny, because in this real estate world that we're in, people kind of go about it backwards, and it's just how we're trained to do it, where they fall in love with the house and then they try to figure out the mortgage side of things. But let's reverse that. Let's get you comfortable with what you should be shopping for based on what you can afford monthly, and then go and fall in love with a house. Don't go fall in love with a house that you think it's where you're going to live for the next 30 years, but and find out that the monthly payment or even the cash to close isn't part of what you can afford right now. So I think backing into it and starting from, it's basically reverse engineering their pre-approval is the best way to go about doing it.
The property taxes is another one, because I have talked to so many friends over the years who have been through this. You buy a house, you get the mortgage, and then 6, 12, 18 months later, your taxes get reassessed.
Right.
And that can have a massive impact, and not in a good way, on what your monthly payment looks like.
Right.
Tell me about that aspect of it, Lucas, because I feel like this is a very, I don't want to say underutilized, but it's not talked about enough in this business, the impact that, taxes going up can have on a borrower.
Yeah, 100%. And so for me, how this started was watching other people have loans that they wrote, and the taxes got reassessed, and unfortunately, some of those people had to sell their home because they couldn't afford it. And so obviously, as a mortgage broker, that's the last thing that I ever want to do. And so for me, what I do is I put together this spreadsheet for them, and I take a look at, hey, where do you want to live based on those three questions that we talked about at the end of that initial call? Where do they want to live? So I put together this spreadsheet that has all of those different areas where they want to live. And then based on what they told me they want their down payment and closing costs to be, that gives me a purchase price of, like, let's say that it's $400,000 through $450,000. Well, at 400, 410, 420, all the way down to 450, these are what the monthly taxes are going to be once they get reassessed. So it prepares them. That first spreadsheet really shows them, okay, if I can afford $3,000 a month and I've got to allot $700 a month for that in taxes, well, that's just how much property taxes. And then we've got to add in homeowners insurance, then we've got to add in your mortgage payment, and potentially mortgage insurance as well, right? So that first spreadsheet is really just an eye-opening experience for them to know how big of a role property taxes play into their monthly payment. And then the second sheet that I put together for them really breaks down, okay, based on your down payment, this is what your principal and interest payment is. This is what your mortgage insurance payment is. This is what your property taxes are going to be. And then here is your homeowner's insurance estimated, obviously. And it gives them a monthly payment for, hey, if I buy a $400,000 house in Rochester Hills versus a $4,000 house in Bloomfield Hills, this is what I can expect to pay. And so it really allows them to write their own pre-approval for them, right? Because, I mean, I'll go back to what I said of, I don't care what you qualify for. I care about what you can afford. And this sheet gives you what you can afford.
So tell me more about how this spreadsheet that you put together became this entire pre-approval strategy for initial calls, because this is really what is setting you apart in the industry. And it's the reason why your broker owner, Chris Sabonik, mentioned your name to me, because he said that when he first saw you going over this, his mind was completely blown.
Yeah. So it's really, really cool because, I mean, the first year I was in mortgages, I didn't do this. And then the second year, I realized that, hey, this is a possibility. And it was at the beginning, the process took hours to put together. And I'll fully admit that. Like at that time, I had hours to put into it. But then as I've gotten busier and I've been blessed with more loans to write and more clients who trust me, now I've had to streamline that process. And so for me, I've built templates that really make this so I can do this in about 10 minutes. But it's just putting it together in a manner that presents the information it's a lot of information, but it's digestible for the client. It's framing it in a way that, hey, this is what you can prepare for. This isn't a if this happens, this is a when this happens kind of thing. So that way you aren't caught off guard and you don't have to feel like you got to go get a second job to afford your mortgage or feel like you have to sell your house to buy a house that you can afford, right? And so it allows this taxes spreadsheet is also a piece of the second half of that pre-approval that we were talking about. And that second half is I make the client get on a Zoom call with me and I make sure that we walk through this and a few other pieces of their pre-approval process to make sure that they are fully comfortable. And then we write a pre-approval based on, hey, this is what you can afford. We're never going to write a pre-approval for what you can, for what you qualify for, rather. But we're going to write your pre-approval for what you can afford, because for me, this pre-approval letter is my communication to your realtor. And though I'm going to call them, though I'm going to talk to them, let's set the expectation so that they don't show you homes that are $50,000 out of your budget, right?
Tell me about the feedback that you have gotten from first-time homebuyers, especially when you get on this Zoom call and walk them through everything you just mentioned.
It's kind of a awestruck moment where they're just like, okay, that makes sense, and they're impressed by it at times, but they're also shocked by it because they didn't realize how much that plays into effect, right? How much property taxes play into effect on your mortgage payment. And so for me, it's on the client side, it's been very eye-opening. It's been the feedback's been very positive. And then on the realtor side, it's been very positive as well, because now what that realtor sees, and to be honest with you too, I recommend when I'm going through a Zoom call with a client, I let the realtor know that we're doing it, and I invite them to the meeting, and they can show up and be a part of it. Of course, if the client's comfortable with me going through some of their personal financial information, and that way they can see, and that way we're all on the same page, we're all on the same team, we can communicate well, we can all have the same expectations for what this client can afford and wants to buy. And so the feedback from the realtor side has been great as well, because what they see is, hey, I'm not going to waste my time showing somebody a house that they can't afford. And not that that would be wasting time or anything like that, but it's just like, let's spend the time that we do have in a positive manner going towards the goal of the purchase price that we want. So from both client and realtor, it's been very positive.
It's interesting. You were telling me that the other part of this is that when you hop on this Zoom call with a client and you give them all this information, it kind of makes them, like you said, feel like they're drinking from a fire hose. But this is strategic on your part because it sets you up to win the deal. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so for me, that fire hose of information line, I can't tell you how many times I say that in a day. Like, I say that a lot, but it's so true, because so let's say that a realtor recommends 3 loan officers to a client, and they call me and they call somebody else. If they go through that first call and this Zoom call with me, I mean, jokingly, but they're not going to want to do that again. And then also, if they do that again, they're going to have a conversation with a loan officer that asks them, hey, what was on your W-2s from last year? What do you have saved in the bank? And okay, this is your pre-approval. And they're going to have some second thoughts on, hey, is this the person I really want to work with because of everything that Lucas went through? And again, I'm not a unicorn. I'm not anybody special, but I just have that ability or that process that I've built that makes them want to go there because it educates them and they feel like they're being taken care of.
Makes perfect sense. I mean, you give them that white glove treatment on the first call. You walk them through everything and more based on, the fact that you're telling them, hey, this is not just what the payment's going to look like now, but let's shop based on what your reassessed taxes is going to be.
Right.
And then, like you said, even if they do go somewhere else to get a second opinion or to shop around, chances are pretty good that that person's not going to walk them through it to the extent that you did. And like you said, did they really want to go through that whole process again?
Yeah. And one quick story on that.
Yeah.
This happened with a realtor that I work with quite regularly on the west side of the state. And I'm from Grand Rapids, and so trying to grow my business over there over the last couple of years, and it's gone really great. But there's a realtor over there that when this person and we got coffee, and he was like, you know what, I'll add you to my list of referrals. And that was cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. And the first 5 clients that he sent over, he included my name with 2 other loan officers. And those first 5 deals, those clients worked with me versus working with with either one of the other 2 loan officers. And now I would say that realtor probably sends my name and maybe one other name, but I'm probably the first person on that list, as opposed to be the third person on that list, right?
Super cool.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you do with your clients right before their first payment is due.
Yeah, this is something that is more recent, like in the last year that I've started doing, but if I'm going to be doing everything that I'm doing with this pre-approval process, I need to follow it up on the back end as well. And so we go to closing, and closing day is awesome. It's there to be a celebration. That's Matt's famous line, is it's a day of celebration, right? And if you do your job right, it truly is. And what I do is at that closing table, I set a reminder in my phone to call them about 3 or 4 days before their first payment is due. And what that call is to, hey, double check, make sure you got all your information from UWM to make sure that you set up your online portal, you're good to go with your account and stuff like that. But it's an opportunity to also remind them that, hey, we talked about your taxes going up, and we don't know if that's going to happen in 6 months or 12 months, but sometime over the next year or so, your taxes are going to go up. That means you're going to have an escrow shortage. So that amount that your taxes are going to go up, I need you to put that amount in your escrow account between now and the next year or so. So that way you don't have an escrow shortage. And it prepares them to be successful. And I mean, you could make the argument that I'm setting myself up not to write refinances in the future, but I would tell you that if I wrote a refinance because somebody had an escrow shortage, I didn't do my job right at the beginning.
It's an amazing point. And again, it's not talked about enough. The fact that somebody buys a house, you're in that kind of honeymoon period.
Yeah.
After you get the house and you're writing your monthly checks, and then you get that envelope in the mail, you open it up and you see escrow shortage. Yeah. And then you call the loan officer and you say, oh, what does this mean? And it's obviously one of 2 options, right? You can either write a check right now for a lump sum payment, which not everybody has,
right?
Or your payment's going up. The fact that you get ahead of it, and like you said, you give them essentially a year to collect some extra money for that moment. I can only imagine how thankful people are when it actually happens, and then, oh, Lucas was the one who told me about this.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, I think for myself, like when I have that initial conversation about taxes, and I know that I talked to them about it, I know that I sent them this spreadsheet, I know all these things, but there's so many things that happen between that pre-approval conversation and closing day, and then a year down the road when taxes get reassessed, that for me, I wouldn't remember that if I wasn't in mortgages, right? So how can I expect my client to remember that? There's just so many different things that are pulling at you, life that goes in so many different directions. Just have a friendly reminder to let them know that that's going to happen. It's just one last good touch point for them.
So this pre-approval process, this spreadsheet that you use on the Zoom call, like you said, it took you a while to put it together.
Yeah.
But now you've gotten to the point where it's kind of rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
Tell us how you tailor it to each individual borrower based on the area that they are looking.
Yeah. So, for me, it's kind of goes back to what I had said previously about just taking the information from that initial call and throwing it into this spreadsheet and making sure that it is tailored to them, making sure it's tailored to the areas that they're looking in, making sure that they know that, hey, if you tell me you want to live in Lake Orion, okay, that's cool. But realize that Lake Orion, your property taxes are going to be much higher than Orion Township. So let's differentiate those two. Also realize that Lake Orion is a much smaller area than Orion Township, and know that, okay, just because the mailing address says Lake Orion doesn't mean that it's actually in Lake Orion. So let's have those conversations. Let's make sure that they are good to go and differentiated on the spreadsheet. But it's just plugging and playing the next client's information in there, but it's in a way that's tailored to them. And so it's not just, hey, here's a document that I send to everybody. No, this is specific to you and your goals. And so it's just putting every new client's information and tailoring it to them.
So the message really for clients around the country is recognize the nuances of the different areas that your clients are looking, because it can be vastly different from one town to the other, one area code to the other.
Yeah, and I mean, this actually just came up last week, and we didn't have a chance to talk about this, but we just got licensed in Georgia, and I'm having to try to put together this process for the state of Georgia as well. And maybe I'm missing something, but the state of Georgia doesn't give you access to what taxes are going to be as easily as what the state of Michigan does. So I had to put together a whole new process to calculate the estimated property taxes in the state of Georgia, which was awesome, and I'm glad that I did. My brain hurt after doing it. That's okay. But it's crazy because property taxes in Georgia are a lot cheaper than they are in Michigan. So that impact on that client in Georgia may be a little bit less, but it's still a very important process to go through, because it doesn't matter if it's $50 a month or $200 a month. They need to be prepared for what's in their monthly payment and what's going to change.
So this whole thing that you've put together, it's kind of your baby.
Yeah.
Now you're teaching it to the other LOs in your shop.
Yeah.
And in a sense, you're just making everybody better. But I want to go back to you in your business, because like we said, you are self-made. You came into this business with no previous mortgage experience. What has been the impact on your growth as an LO since you started doing this pre-approval process?
It's pretty crazy because, so at Mitten, we don't buy leads. It's all self-generated business, right? And so the first year I was in mortgages, I wrote 9 loans, and I thought I killed it. I mean, I worked my butt off. My brain hurt every day, and I was just like, okay, this is cool. And obviously you wanted to do more. And so in 2025, my second year in mortgages, my goal was to write 22 loans. Well, I blew that out of the water and I wrote 43 loans. And so for me to basically 5X my business from year to year, and then through 2026, through 2 months, I've already written 16 loans this year. And I'm just like, it's really cool to see how the fruits of the labor come from that. And I mean, it's a blessing. I'm very thankful for the opportunities that I've been given and the skills I've been given. But it's crazy to see. I never thought I'd be here going into year 3 of mortgages and having the success that I've been lucky to have. It's
a super cool story, and to me, my favorite part is that you are truly doing right by the consumer. Like you said, you are not at all focusing on what somebody qualifies for. You are thinking big picture. What can you afford? Not just now, but 6 to 12 months down the road. So yeah. I think the universe is repaying you, man, for the great things that you're doing for your clients. So keep up the great work, and thank you so much for sharing with us, Lucas Vanderbosch from Mitten Mortgage Lending. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me, Justin. I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching Good Better Broker and helping us support independent mortgage brokers everywhere. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel to be notified about new videos, as well as your preferred podcast platform for a new episode every other Tuesday.